what is Kamala Harris going to do about the far left flank of her party? I should just say the left flank, but this is kind of the far left flank. As we saw, the conversation, the debate about this VP pick was about Josh Shapiro too. Was Josh Shapiro not picked because he was Jewish? Let's be honest. If his name was not Shapiro, would he have been picked? There's a lot of debate about that. I don't know which direction all you guys go in, but I think there's something to it. But Kamala Harris is now having to deal with that progressive wing of the party, the ones that have shut down the city that three of us live in. Do all three of us live in New York City? Maybe three of us live in New York City, but it's become difficult to move in New York City because of that protest wing. And guess what? It came to a Kamala rally and campaign rally in Detroit yesterday. Let's take a look.
Intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that. Otherwise, I'm speaking.
A bad line treated like the best line they'd ever heard. But while she was in Detroit, she also ran into Layla Alabed, who is Rashida Tlaib's sister and a founder of the Uncommitted National Movement. Slightly different tone here.
Meet with us to talk about an arms embargo. And she, nodded. She agreed, yes, we will meet. And so I think in that moment, it felt reassuring, and this window of openness to meet with uncommitted leaders, to meet with Michigan voters, to talk about what is necessary in this moment to save lives. And I really felt that VP Harris's empathy towards me and empathy towards the plight of Palestinians was incredibly genuine.
I mean, no quotes in that. Again, vibes, a lot of vibes. But I'll tell you what, politicians lie a lot and they tell constituents and voters what they want to hear. Batya, did you get the sense from that Kamala Harris is committed to that particular point of view on the Israel-Palestine conflict? What do you think her position on this is? It's very, very hard to divine this. You need the Kamala decoder ring from 2020 to now because she's taken a million positions. And, what does she actually do strategically to deal with that flank of her party?
So I'm going to say something possibly controversial. I loved both of those clips. I loved her Yas tweeting, girl bossing of the hecklers. I'm speaking now. I don't know. Wow. I loved it. As a woman, I was like, women really hate being interrupted. And she just sort of shut it down. And I loved the clip of this very gently spoken Palestinian activist who stood in line patiently, didn't interrupt the rally. She waited to say, Madam Vice President, I'm a potential voter. Here's what I want. I mean, this is what democracy is supposed to look like. It was the first time I had seen in a very long time an advocate for the Palestinians in America who I thought, this is a person I would like to sit down and have a conversation with. This is a person who, clearly her heart is beating for from a genuine place. And she came up within her mind, I believe correctly, the most effective way of getting the thing she wants done in exchange for her vote. And I thought that was great. What does Kamala Harris think about Israel? Nothing. She doesn't have any convictions. Kamala Harris is a perfect reflection of where the blob thinks the center of gravity of the Democratic Party is at. And the extent to which she cannot choose, she cannot decide between, on the one hand, she won't meet with Bibi. On the other hand, she puts out a statement denouncing the protesters. On the one hand, she shuts down the hecklers. On the other hand, she's very kind to these people in line. That's exactly, she's a perfect reflection of the tension within the party right now between, caving to the sort of far left and then having, a sort of strong pro-Israel perspective. But I'm very curious, actually, Coleman and Rupa, what you guys make of this as people who are maybe less sort of steeped in it, less kind of, what does this look like from the outside? Do you think that she's handling this well? Where do you think she goes from here?
Well, I like you. I thought her one-liner was effective, right? It got her crowd to cheer, which is really, and it it meant she didn't have to say anything of substance about the issue, which from a politician's point of view is actually pretty successful. But the reason this question is hard to answer, Batya, is because we don't know what Kamala thinks. We barely know what Kamala thinks about domestic policy, much less foreign policy. I don't know if she has a foreign policy philosophy. I'm pretty sure she doesn't. I much less a specific philosophy about the Israel-Palestine conflict or geopolitics in the Middle East, Iran. I've got no idea. I have no reason to suspect she's even really competent on these issues. And so, it just, we're going to have to see. I mean, at some point, I know Republicans are, Ben Shapiro is every day he's pulling back the calendar and counting the days, how many days it's been since Kamala has given a substantive interview to a journalist. But eventually, we're going to have to see what she has to say about these issues. I think a lot of people are happy with just the symbolism and like the avatar of a strong woman of color, and she delivers on that. But for those people who actually care about the substance behind the avatar, there's just nothing to go off of yet.
Am I going to let Rupa speak, or am I going to yell at both of you? Should I yell at both of you? What is wrong with you guys? Batya, Coleman, two smart people having absolute meltdowns on our first broadcast. Good Lord, it's not a good line. It's the same line she repeated from the stupid debate in 2020. Very scripted. I'm talking. That crowd, she could have said, I'm cleaning the garage, and they would have gone crazy. They would have screamed for anything. It was a boring line. The thing about it is she doesn't, does she say, you know what? Stop your yelling. This is a country that has a right to exist. Yes, the Palestinians should live in peace and do that two-state solution thing, but she's scared of everything. She's scared of taking a position. And that's how I read it in Batya. I know you want to give credit to Rashida Tlaib's sister. I once interviewed Lech Walesa, the man from Solidarity, Poland, who won a Nobel Prize. And he said to me at one point, I was angry that Gorbachev won a Nobel Prize. And I said, why? He said, well, because he was given a prize for not invading countries and killing people. Thanks for doing that. We have lowered the bar so much that when you have someone who's like, I waited in line and asked a question, you were like, bravo. That tells you a lot. That tells you a lot that you're happy that someone didn't smash a window and put a red triangle on it. So anyway, to you, Rupa, because I just had to get in there. I didn't want to interrupt Batya because she's a woman and she gets very mad about that. But I'm going to do it now and we're done. And back to you, Rupa.
So on Kamala Harris, Michael, I think she was, I frankly, this was Kamala Harris unscripted. And frankly, I thought what she had to say was childish, for lack of a better term.
Yay, Rupa.
It sounded like someone was throwing a temper tantrum, and it was not very, it just didn't come across well. And I agree with Coleman, that, we don't really know what her takes are on domestic policy, let alone what she thinks about what's happening outside the United States, or when it comes to foreign policy. But having said that, I do think that, look, a few weeks ago, we were willing to entertain the idea that Biden was going to, run again. And this, and he could barely, no one knew whether it was coming or going. He didn't know whether he was coming or going. So, I think we've come to a point where it's become less relevant what a candidate really has, a candidate's views on a particular policy. I think there's a team of people around these people that come up with these policies, and that's where it stands as far as I can see as an outsider. And I think we're going to see a continuation of the same foreign policy, which I think is a good one, because Kamala Harris's team posted earlier on X that Israel has a right to defend itself, and this question of an arms embargo is not something that they're even willing to entertain. So I think whatever happens, Kamala Harris becomes president, I think you're just going to have a continuation of U.S. foreign policy as it was under Biden.
I think that's probably right. You're right, Rupa.
I'm curious what you guys think of this whole, Coleman, where are you on the fact that this is something I'm really struggling with, obviously, but where are you on the fact that so many of our fellow Americans are willing to cast their vote just based on vibes. Like, how do you feel about that? Because I'm really not sure how I feel about it, but I can't stop thinking about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the sad truth is that, you know, we love to blame politicians for sucking and say it's all their fault, but a lot of it is our fault. And sometimes in moments of despair, I think that we're bad and deserve bad things, you know, like there's so much there's so much that's wrong with the way that people vote. I mean, consider just like the notion of name recognition. It's just a truism that you can't run a politician that like people haven't heard of. But what does that actually mean if you dig into it? It means like people aren't willing to do 15 minutes of research on a new person to see what their position is. So it's just like, I don't know what to say. I mean, we kind of are at the point where people will vote purely for a symbol. And, you know, they will, I mean, Kamala Harris doesn't have a platform right now. So look, if you're a vote blue no matter who person, if that's your philosophy, then I get it. You're voting blue no matter who. You're voting for a set of policy instincts, basically, that you assume are going to be there. If you're a Democrat, I get that. I'm an independent. So to me, I feel I'm someone you have to make a case to me. You have to make a case for your competence, for your policies, and on down the list. So that's where I'm at.
But Coleman, you know, when you mentioned Ben Shapiro and a lot of conservatives pointing out that the Operation Bubble Wrap is now in its female guise with, you know, Kamala Harris not talking to the press in 19 days. But, you know, and, you know, the name recognition stuff with Tim Walz, et cetera. But the interesting thing about this is that she has not taken positions. She has changed her position. She has not spoken in 19 days. Look at where the polls have gone. Why would she speak? The polls are drifting further and further. And it's just like, wait for the unforced errors from Donald Trump. Don't say much. It annoys the Republicans. It annoys conservative activists. But you know why it annoys them? Because they're paying attention. Most people are not paying attention right now. They have no idea that Kamala Harris hasn't spoken to the press in 19 days because they see images of her on TV. They see her getting off of planes. They see her at rallies. Yeah, she's out there. She's campaigning. But, you know, is she talking to the press? Is she taking hard questions? Absolutely not. And it's really working for her.